Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Bhakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachavine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paschatyadesarini Panchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vasha Padinam Bhavebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namaho Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasri Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Srila Prabhupada ki. So every year, on the day preceding the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, we honor a very special devotee who appeared in our movement in the very early days when Prabhupada was just beginning his movement on the west coast of America, and his name was Jayananda. There's not much written about him, but there is some. There is a few lengthy articles that comprise many pages describing in a very succinct form his activities in devotional service, and there's one or two books also written about his life. What makes Jayananda so special is, aside from the activities performed and the quality of his character, which Srila Prabhupada really adored, is that Prabhupada gave him special mercy by illustrating that in this our society every year we should honor him the day before Lord Nrsingadev's appearance, and at the same time, anytime there's a Rath Yatra anywhere in the ISKCON society, his picture must be placed on the cart. It's a very special devotee in the sense that he simply gave himself fully to helping Srila Prabhupada. And you have to understand, in those days, things were very basic. There were only a few temples and a few devotees, and things were just beginning to develop in our Hare Krishna movement. And therefore, one of the things that was lacking was money. We didn't have any money, and Prabhupada was very enthusiastic to preach, to print his books. And he had completed in a very succinct, or maybe say summarized form, Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion. And he didn't have the money to print it. And Jayananda, born in, I believe he was born in Columbus, Ohio. And he went to college, actually, in Columbus, Ohio. And he graduated as a mechanical engineer. But his mood was, he wasn't so interested in associating with people of the same, what we say, trade as he was. And he was always outside of society. But in that outside mood, he was always looking for spiritual life. So one day he came to San Francisco, and Prabhupada was there at the time, and Prabhupada was holding a satsang one particular night, and there was some advertising. He read the advertising, and he came to hear Srila Prabhupada. That was back in 1967. So you can see he was one of the first devotees. The movement didn't really generate devotees until 1966, and then that was a slow process in San Francisco, in New York, and also a little bit in Los Angeles. And so after hearing Prabhupada's talk, he understood immediately, this is my spiritual master, this is what I've been searching for. So then he started to associate with devotees. And not wanting to associate with the common people, he accepted a very menial service of driving a cab driver. And he would save whatever money he could get. He lived very simply. And he had about $5,000 that he had saved. And when he heard that Srila Prabhupada needed money to print his Nectar Devotion, he gave his entire savings, $5,000. That was in 1967. And in those days, that was a lot of money as compared to today, because things were very much different as far as the economic values of the currency. So you might speculate in a very, what we say, good way, that $5,000 then is about $50,000 now. That's how much the value of money has changed in terms of purchasing power. And so he gave it all, and Prabhupada was very happy, and he immediately had his Nectar Devotion printed, which was something that he really wanted to get out to the devotees, because Nectar Devotion is the science of bhakti in a very developed form given by Srila Rupa Goswami. If you want to know how bhakti works, read Nectar Devotion. The entire science, in a very summarized form, is there in Nectar Devotion. And it's enough to get you fixed in devotional service, and also to understand how the process works. And so Prabhupada really wanted that in print so he could explain in a very literary way what his movement actually was about. Prabhupada really appreciated Jayananda. Now, Jayananda, in those days, there were only a few temples. So he became part of the San Francisco temple at the time. And there wasn't hardly any money. So he would work during the day, and he'd give his whole paycheck to the temple for whatever expenses they needed. Because in those days, we didn't have a congregational movement. The only devotees that were practicing Krishna consciousness were those living in the temple. The congregation didn't really develop until many, many years later. But in those days, it was just the local Westerners who joined the temple. And most of them never had any money. And that's the way it was. And so it was a struggle to develop our society. Many times there were many examples where devotees could not even pay the rent when it came time, because we didn't purchase any buildings in those days. Everything was rental. Malati, I'm sure you know Malati from New Vrindavan. She tells one story when they were also up in San Francisco. It was her, Guru Das, Shamasundar, and they had a little preaching center there, and the rent was due the next day, and they had no money, zero. Because whatever money they collected by distributing incense, back to Godhead wasn't even going at that time. They would distribute some incense and get a little donation here and there, and give people a little bit of prashadam and an invitation to the temple. So the money, the rent was due the next day. So they were walking, the three of them, I think, down one street discussing how we're going to raise the money for the rent. Because in those days, in that area, if you didn't pay your rent, you were out. Because there were so many people looking for places in that area. It was a prime area for people to live. And so they were really in a quandary thinking how to raise the money. And while they were walking along the street, Malati explains that there were $100 bills flying in the air. She couldn't understand. Nobody understood where they came from. The street was somewhat empty, and all they could see was $100 bills flying in the air. You can try raising money like that. If you have faith, it works. It's a big. So Krishna provided, and then they collected whatever they could, and then they paid the rent. Another story was in our Philadelphia temple. The rent was due, $250 for a month of rent. And the money was not there at all, also, the early days. And so the temple president was thinking, we need the money, and tomorrow the rent's due. Let's just take everyone out on Sankirtan. So they just put the whole temple out on Sankirtan, and they went out doing Harinam. And then while they were doing Harinam, one young man Well, he dressed very nicely, suit, tie, came up, came up to one of the young girls who were in the kirtan and said, "This, and I want to give this to you." So he handed her an envelope, and then he turned around and left, and no one saw him ever again. And that in that envelope, she opened it up, it was $250 exactly. This is how Krishna consciousness works. If you have faith in Krishna and you work in that mood, you'll see miracles happen, because when Krishna sees you're sincerely trying, he makes everything happen. So Jayananda had that kind of mood, that if you simply serve Krishna, everything will be all right. And so he worked in such a way as he would get up in the morning, he would channel his rounds, and then he would go to the classes, then he would cook for the devotees, and then he would leave and go out and do his taxi driving, come back at night, and then again engage in some services around the temple. And then that's what he would do every day. And then after some time, our movement became a little bit more noticeable. So we started to actively try to recruit devotees into the temple. So he was one of the first persons to do that. And he was so good at it because everyone liked him. He had a certain nature about it that he was so likable. Why? Because he was very, very dedicated to Prabhupada's mission, more so than any of the other devotees at that time. And he worked in such a way as that he would give all his time, all his resources, all his energy for serving. Devotees would say he would be the last one to take rest at night and the first one to wake up in the morning. No one ever saw him sleep because he was in that cycle. And so he exemplified his devotional mood. And then there were many things in the early days that were needed. One time, if he saw, he would take over the temple presidency where no one else was available. And he would try to manage, at the same time, do all the other services and go to work. But when he saw someone a little qualified, he would say, "Okay, you become the temple president." He never wanted it, but he did it because there was nobody else was doing it. So one day, one of the temple presidents, one new young man came into the temple, and the temple president said, "We need someone to help with the garbage. So go, there's one devotee there, he's taking care of the garbage, go help him." So that was Jayananda, he was taking care of the garbage. So he liked the menial services, the ones that were the ones that apparently seemed to be the most insignificant, because he never liked the idea of being glorified. If someone would start speaking some nice words about him, he would walk away. Or he would say, "They're just saying that because I've been in longer in the society than they are." That's he would always he would very much be averse to hearing people talk nice about him. And then if someone criticized another devotee and he was there, he would immediately leave. He would never like to hear criticism of anyone. And when devotees would notice that, oh, Jayananda is leaving, they would stop their criticism because they know that was wrong. He would indicate that this is not good, and he left. Now he was in that mood. So when this one young man, new person, came to help him with the garbage, after he came back, he said, "Wow, if the garbage man is so blissful and so joyful and so happy, I wonder what the rest of the devotees are like. I think I want to join." So we did. A blissful garbage man. So that was his mood. He always wanted to take those services. That were sometimes the devotees wouldn't have enough vegetables to even to prepare enough food for the devotees in the temple. He would go to the dumpsters, and sometimes the different supermarkets, when their vegetables would get a little old, they would throw them out, but they were still good in many cases. he would go and retrieve them. When Prabhupada would come to the temple, Prabhupada would be there, and he would say, "Where's Jayananda?" And go find Jayananda. He would ask for him all the time. And then they would say, and they would come to Jayananda, "Prabhupada wants to see you. Prabhupada wants to see me. I'm so dirty. How can I go in front of Prabhupada?" Because he would be fixing automobiles, taking out the garbage, cleaning the temple. And if the temple president left, then he would take over the position. But in the meantime, but he never wanted any position. He never wanted any glorification. He simply wanted to serve. Now that was his mood, and everyone would say that he served in such a way that everyone liked him. One of the things that he would do was, in San Francisco, there were many of these markets, open markets, almost like you see in India, where they would have vegetables. And he would go there and beg vegetables from the vegetable sellers. And they would like him so much, they'd give him a reduced price. And after some time, they'd give it to him for free. They would just give it to him for free, because everybody liked him. And he was just so friendly and so lovable that when other devotees would come and go to the same merchants, they would say, "Where is Johnny Ananda?" They would call him Johnny Ananda instead of Johnny Ananda. Yeah, so there was many incidents like that. And of course, sometimes he would give class. When he would give class, the class was always about faith in Prabhupada, how wonderful Krishna consciousness is, and the importance of chanting your rounds. Because when he would chant his rounds, he would sit in the corner and just sit down tightly, and he would chant 16 rounds, and then he'd get up. He wouldn't even do anything until he finished 16 rounds. So he did that the first thing in the morning. So aside from his strong sadhana and his activities, he did so many other things. And of course, after some time, the idea was to start having Ratha Yatra. When Malati had found that little deity of Jagannath in the Cost Plus shop in San Francisco, Prabhupada commissioned Shama Sundar to build or sculpture big forms of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. And the first Ratha Yatra, I think, was held in 1968 in San Francisco. And Jayananda was the one who built the carts. He would gather wood, beg wood from wood people, and then they would put the cart together. And he would work tirelessly in building the carts. Sometimes he would be working so hard that and there would be a lot of work and not enough the devotees doing. And people would be walking because everything was done on the street. So he would say, "Hey, would you like to serve God? Come on." So he would pull people from the street, and they would say, "Man, this guy's pretty good." Okay. And they would come, and then he would engage them. One time he was underneath a car, fixing a car, and he was preaching to two guys who were standing outside who couldn't even see him. Well, he was just fixing the car from underneath, and his two legs were shown, and he's preaching to these two guys. So he had such a strong desire to preach that, but at the same time, he always wanted to serve. So he was always doing both at the same time. This was his mood. And of course, at one point, then he became famous for putting the carts together. In 1976, Prabhupada had indicated to the devotees, I want to do Ratha Yatra down New York City. I want to bring Jagannath to the most important city in America and have Ratha Yatra." The devotees worked hard, got their permit, got the sanction of the city. The plan was to have right down the Fifth Avenue, which is the most important city in New York. We got that. And so the carts had to be built. So guess it, we couldn't find any place in New York that we could use to build the carts, because everything is very, commercial. We went everywhere. And guess who gave us their property? Hmm? Donald Trump. That's why he became president. He did that save him. He was kind to the devotees, and he let us use his. He had like a huge parking lot or something that was part of his ownership, and he allowed us. And so we had it. It was right near the Hudson River in New York. So we built carts there. And the next day at 10 o'clock, no, I'm sorry, not 10. Yeah, 10 o'clock, the Rath Yatra was scheduled. So there was a rush to get the carts done because he built 3 carts, not just one. We've had a cart for each of the deities. And when they were finishing Balaram's cart, was the last cart, just after they had completed the cart, a big wind came from the Hudson River and blew the canopy, and the whole cart came crashing down, and the metal frame broke, and the cart was smashed. It couldn't be used. So that was about 10 o'clock that night after they had worked. So now they had to have the cart ready for the next morning. It's a beautiful story how Jayananda rallied all the devotees, and they stayed up the whole night to rebuild that cart, and by 6:30 the next morning the cart was finished, which was because Prabhupada wanted that Rath Yatra, but there wasn't no doubt that they were going to do it. And that's the way Jayananda. And then of course Prabhupada said, "I have conquered New York." Jagannath has come. Jagannath is the supreme king, and he is now the the proprietor of everything. So now he is now being honored in his most important city in America at the time. So Prabhupada was very pleased. My mother, she went to that Rath Yatra in 1976. And that's the first time she went to Rath Yatra. It's the first time she took part in in an active festival. And she used to tell me how nice it was. I would see her after. So this is Jayananda, but working so hard, he somewhat neglected his health. And working, sleeping a little. And in those days, devotees liked prasadam. We still like prasadam, but not the way we did in those days. We really liked it. We made sure everybody understood how much we liked it. So devotees would eat huge piles of prasadam. And Jayananda, he worked very hard, but he also ate a lot. But he was big. He's about 6'5". It's pretty tall. And but they used to call him the sweet giant. He was so humble, sweet, and very, very, very good natured. But although he was very big, he looked very powerful externally, but he was so sweet on the inside. And after some time, he got sick, and he came down with leukemia. But he still continued his service even though he was sick. And 1977, May 1st, he actually disappeared from the world because the leukemia actually got him. They brought him to the hospital before then, and he didn't like being in the hospital without prasadam, so he would tell the devotees, "Bring prasadam from the temple. I can't eat this hospital stuff." And then they would bring prasadam. And but he was in leukemia in those days was very difficult to cure. Even now, it can be a deadly disease. And so he departed the world in a very interesting way. He was near the Philadelphia temple, just outside in a little room nearby. And as soon as the conch shell blew to announce the beginning of Mangal Arati, 4:30 in the morning, as soon as that conch shell blew, he left his body, just at the beginning of Mangal Arati. And Prabhupada, I'll read what Srila Prabhupada wrote to Jayananda. It's quite heartfelt how Prabhupada felt about Jayananda. And this is Prabhupada's letter. And this is, my dear Jayananda, please accept my blessings. I am feeling very intensely your separation. In 1967, you joined me in San Francisco. You were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna. You were the first man to give some contribution, 5,000, for printing my Bhagavad Gita. After that, you have rendered very favorable service to Krishna in different ways. I so hope at the time of your death, you were remembering Krishna, and as such, you have been promoted to the eternal association of Krishna. If not, if you had any tinge of material desire, you have gone to the celestial kingdom to live with the demigods for many thousands of years and enjoy the most opulent life of material existence. From there, you can promote yourself to the spiritual world. But even if one fails to promote himself to the spiritual world, at that time he comes down again on the surface of this globe and takes birth in a big family like yogis or brahmanas, or an aristocratic family where there's again chance of reviving Krishna consciousness. But as you are hearing Krishna Kirtan, I'm sure that you were directly promoted to Krishna Lokam. That's Prabhupada. And who says, and then Prabhupada added, Krishna has done a great favor to you, not to allow you to continue your diseased body, and has given you a suitable place for your service. Thank you very much. Your ever well wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. And Prabhupada. We really had a lot of affection for, and he understood the heart of Jayananda. He was so dedicated to Srila Prabhupada's mission. And it's an interesting little episode that probably nobody knows of. My first disciple I ever had back in 2006, her name was Kalindi, and she had the occupation of a hospice where people exit the world, they take care of them now. So one day, this lady came in, she was elderly and she was brought in. So she was taking care of her. And then she I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but my disciple found out that she was the mother of Jayananda. And so then she knew a little bit about Jayananda, and she started talking to the mother how wonderful and glorious and very saintly her son was. And then the family members also came and then got connected with the devotee also. And they were so pleased that the mother of Jayananda was taken care of by a devotee in her last moments before she left the world. So that's Krishna's mercy. Krishna wanted to show his mercy upon the mother of Jayananda by giving her a chance to leave the world in the association of a devotee. And then the family members, his sister and her husband, said to this disciple of mine, I want you to speak a little bit more about Jayananda. So they arranged some gathering where she came and spoke whatever she knew about Jayananda. So that was a pretty amazing arrangement by Krishna, how he did that, just to show his affection for his devotee by giving the mother of that great devotee the opportunity to get, the exit from the world in a Krishna conscious manner. That was really beautiful. So this is a little bit about the life of Jayananda. There's so many personal stories how he dealt with different devotees, how he would bring people in and just give them prasadam, take care of them, and engage them in devotional service. People came to him because not so much that he was always preaching to them, but the way he treated people. he became their friend as soon as he met them, and they felt that way. And therefore they had faith in him, and they liked him automatically. After he had left the world, when some of the devotees would go to the merchants where he used to go and beg vegetables and buy vegetables, they would ask about him, where's Jayananda? And then they would have to very heartbreakingly tell them that he is no longer with us. And some of them would cry. These were ordinary people who knew him simply because he came and showed some kindness, friendship to him. And they liked him so much that they became really close friends. So when they heard that he left the world, it broke their hearts, many of them. They were just ordinary people. So that's how much he touched everybody's heart. So Prabhupada recognized him. And that recognition, I don't think, was given to anybody else, at least during the time of Srila Prabhupada's stay with us. Only Jayananda had that personal recognition by Prabhupada. And you can see by the letter how Prabhupada was really personal with him and said that I'm sure that Krishna took you back to the spiritual world. Mm-hmm. Now that's pretty amazing to get that kind of recognition from Srila Prabhupada. This today is considered to be the disappearance of Jayananda. We honor him on that day. And many devotees around the world in different places are also celebrating his disappearance in different ways. But we honor him mostly through placing his picture, large photo of him on the carts of Jagannath, mostly on Subhadra's carts when there are 3 carts, like that. And that's the same cart Prabhupada rides in. Prabhupada always rode in Subhadra's cart when we used to do the Jagannath Rath Yatra, when there was 3 carts. Okay, so that's a little bit about Jayananda. There's a few books. One is called Jayananda, The Life of Jayananda, by his name is Ashok. No, I'm sorry, not Ashok, Vishok. Vishok, he was a devotee in New Vrindavan. He wrote a book. And there is another book by one lady, I can't remember her name. Yeah, she also wrote something lengthy on his life. So he was a tribute to Krishna consciousness in a real way. He showed what it meant to be a devotee in the real sense. Selfless and always concerned about the welfare of others. Mm-hmm. Hey, so anything you want to speak about or hear about? I can bring up, yes.
Question.
Yeah.
Thank you. One comment I was telling that it's a very nice book by his wife, Vaya Sakhi Prabhu for Radha Damodar Vilas, that talks about the life history of both Jayananda Prabhu and Vishnujan Maharaj. Very beautiful book.
Oh, yeah. Radha Damodar Vilas, part 1 or 2?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
there you can learn more. Yeah, I just skimmed over in a very shortened way some of the activities of Jayananda.
one question I had, Maharaj. So you said that Prabhupada did not give the recognition to anyone else.
At least when he was personally present, yeah. It's not like that. He gave a special day where we honor him. That's the recognition.
But if Prabhupada ever say to any of the disciples that passed in his presence or anything like that, where Prabhupada said you were going back to the spiritual world or something?
Many times. He said many of my leading devotees in my movement were sent by Lord Chaitanya because Lord Chaitanya needed assistance in order to push on this movement. And he said specifically about 1 or 2 senior devotees that they were associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and they have come again. He said that particularly about Jayapataka Swami, that's for sure. He said that in public. Oh yeah, so the devotees in this movement, the ones in the early days, were very special. They were sent by Krishna to assist Prabhupada because Prabhupada's mission was to spread Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was sent to this world by Krishna to do the work. It's not like Prabhupada all of a sudden became spiritually realized and he decided to take up this. This was, Prabhupada knew that he had a mission his whole life and wasn't to a certain age that it actually manifested. But Prabhupada talks about it in a very personal way to one devotee. We were in the personal room of Bhakti Charu Swami many years ago. Maharaj had organized us, all the devotees, to speak about Prabhupada. So one senior devotee, it was Bhavananda, he started to speak. He said, I was massaging Srila Prabhupada one day, and Prabhupada was unusually quiet because Prabhupada, most of the time, he would always be speaking about Krishna or something related to Krishna consciousness. He was always animated in some way, but this time he was quite quiet. And so he was being massaged, and then at one point, he just started to speak without any indication. And he said, I was with Krishna, and Krishna said, you go to the material world and preach. And I said to Krishna, material world? Horrible place. Horrible place. And then Krishna said, no, you go and write some books and I'll protect you. So I came. So Prabhupada was sent to do this work. He was not somebody who just became, empowered. He was Nitya Siddha, the person who comes to this world simply on a mission, not because of karma, to do the work of the Lord. And this is in connection with Lord Chaitanya's desire to spread Krishna consciousness. Mahaprabhu had appeared, at that time, less than 500 years ago. So Mahaprabhu's mission was to establish worldwide Krishna consciousness. What is the whole verse? In every town and village, my name will be chanted, the Lord said. So this is the prophecy, and this is coming about now. So we're all involved in this very historical period in the history of mankind, to be instruments to help bring Lord Chaitanya's mission into the world, because this is the desire of the Lord. Eternal religious principles are very rarely accepted by people in general. People generally follow religion for some material gain. That is the mood mostly. But Krishna consciousness is the eternal religion, where bringing the soul back to the Supreme Lord in loving devotion, perfecting that relationship through active devotional service, and ultimately ending one's life by returning to the spiritual world. This movement is not about making a nice place here. It's not a nice place. It's a place where birth, death, disease, old age, and Adhyatmika, Adhibautika, Adhidaivika, miseries of body, mind, miseries of other living entities, miseries of higher powers, so many anomalies in this world, just to kick the living entity to wake up that this is not our home. So so this movement is not about, finding some nice place within the spiritual movement and at the same time, pursuing material desires. Material activities will go on in the name of responsibilities, but it's not the goal. The goal ultimately is Prema Pumartha Mahan, develop love for Krishna. And that's why the acharyas come to teach us how to develop our love for Krishna. And it's very easy because love for Krishna is the constitutional nature of all living beings. that love is not something that can be developed or manufactured. It's the nature of the soul. Nitya Siddha, Krishna Prema, Sadhu Kabunoi, Sravanadi Siddhi Chitte, Kodiye Udoy. In the hearts of all living entities, pure love for Krishna exists. And so the goal of life is to awaken that pure love in the form of serving the Lord with the desire to please the Lord. And once that is awakened, that brings complete satisfaction and happiness and awakening of the eternal relationship with the Supreme Lord. And that is the actual goal of spiritual life. There's no second goal. Second goals are intermediate goals which lead to the ultimate goal, such as I want to perfect my chanting. I want to learn philosophical teachings based on the scriptures. I want to be expert in serving in a particular way. These are intermediate goals, which are important, but they all lead to the ultimate goal. If the intermediate goals become the ultimate goal, then one has missed the boat. The real goal is Prema Pumartha Mahan, to love Krishna. And that love is natural. Natural, and the word nature and natural are very similar. So it's your nature to love God, therefore it's natural. In this world, we're taking up loving relationships in different ways, with different living entities in different relationships, such as friends, family members, and people in general. These things are natural to human society and also the nature of the soul's existence, the human being's existence in the material world. But all of these things ultimately end in due course of time. But our relationship with Krishna never ends. It's always there. But it remains gupta, hidden. And therefore, by chanting Hare Krishna, serving the Lord, serving the Lord's devotees, worshiping the Lord in his deity form, taking Krishna Prasadam, and hearing about our relationship with Krishna through the authorized scriptures and the teachers, we gradually come to that realization of who we are and how we can achieve perfection in life. And that is Krishna consciousness. And that whole science is given to us in a very succinct form in the Nectar of Devotion and expanded upon in Srimad Bhagavatam especially. So if you read Srimad Bhagavatam, Nasta Prayeshu Avadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttamasloke, Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. By regular attendance and hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam, all that is inauspicious in the heart is all automatically destroyed, and loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it becomes an irrevocable fact. Bhagavat's very powerful. So if you want to boil it down, Lord Chaitanya has given us the formula. He said there's 5 very powerful forms of devotional service. One, he spoke to Rupa Goswami in Allahabad and Prayag for 10 days, describing the entire science. And in that he said, chanting of the holy names of the Lord, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, hearing and reading Bhagavatam daily, worshiping the Lord's form as the deity, Archa Vigraha, associating with and serving Vaishnavas, and living in a holy place. These 5 principles are 5 very powerful forms of devotional service. And to illustrate it, he mentions that even a brand new devotee who is just beginning Krishna consciousness, they can also experience ecstatic feelings of happiness when they take up any one of these 5, especially the chanting of the holy name, like that. So this is our movement, and it's easy. Yes? Everyone agrees, but nobody wants to agree. It's easy. Or you might say, Prabhupada said, it's simple, but not easy. Why is it not easy? Is because the material energy is always pushing us in the other direction. So, but it's simple. Chant Hare Krishna, associate with devotees, take prasadam, hear the glories of the Lord, and work in such a way that you can offer some time, energy, abilities in the service of the Lord. Do something for Krishna. That easy.
Maharaj said in the class just now, if the final goal is love of God, but the intermediate goals are like doing deity worship, learning the philosophy to speak. So, I mean, honestly speaking, we do these things so that we have a faith, it will eventually fetch us love of God.
Right.
So, but for myself, I don't think I know how to love Krishna.
Well, Krishna is all attractive. That's the name Krishna means. So the more you associate with Krishna, the more your attraction for Krishna will automatically develop. So that association comes by hearing about Krishna, his pastimes, his qualities, his names, his different forms, how he interacts with the devotees, how he interacts with the material energy, how he interacts with different types of people in different ways. So Krishna is a person. He has a personality, and he exhibits his personality in certain ways. So when we learn about him and hear about him, we see everything about him is attractive. One of the names of Krishna, or one of the titles of Krishna, is Bhagavan. He's complete in wealth, knowledge, strength, beauty, fame, and renunciation. All of these things are there. These are the things that people chase after in the material world to find some kind of stability, some happiness in this world. People want wealth. They want some position. If they become famous, they think that their life's successful. They develop knowledge. They use that in order to further their desires in this world. Oh, all of these qualities are there in Krishna in full. So the word is satam prasangam mama virya samvido bhavanti hridkarna rasayana katam. That in the association of devotees, hear and chant the glories of the Lord brings happiness. The word is rasayana, kata, nectar, to the hridkarna. Hrid means heart, karna means ear. So the heart and the ear become charmed by hearing the glories of the Lord in the association with devotees. We become happy just by hearing about it. And that when that develops more and more, then the attraction for Krishna is gradually being awakened. And then you want to hear more about Krishna. And we see, and just like I see people who come to Krishna consciousness, and they start practicing, and then they start losing their enthusiasm for material success, material activities. One lady came to me, she said, I can't go to work anymore. I don't like it. I said, you're doing good. Keep going. You're on your way to the spiritual world. So if you lose your taste for material activities, then that's a good sign. Be careful what happens. There's that one poetic expression by Srila Rupa Goswami also. He said, don't go. Don't go. Don't go down to the banks of the river Jamuna and see that beautiful boy standing in the threefold bending form playing on his flute. Don't go. and your material life is finished. So it's rhetorical. He's saying that this is what happens. When we get attracted to Krishna, then that attraction just continues to develop. So the process is to hear. If we're not hearing regularly about Krishna, we're just doing service for Krishna. After a while, we will get a little bit, well, we're getting advancement, we're getting some understanding. But what really charms the heart is the glorification of the Lord. That's why everyone loves kirtan, because kirtan is the direct glorification of the Lord. Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Maharaj Pariksit for 7 days, and Maharaj Pariksit forgot about eating, forgot about sleeping, didn't even want water. He simply wanted to hear. He is so absorbed that even when Sukadeva Goswami, after 6 days, Septa said, Maharaj, you want some water? You want to rest a little bit? He was so eager, he said, this is what I've been waiting for, the 10th canto. So continue. So then Sukadeva Goswami became more enthusiastic. So yeah, this is how it is. As we connect with Krishna,